And that's what, if we're not careful, when the banks go under, you lose your house, not the bank. You lose your house, and that's not fair. So these are real issues that we're going to have to grapple with. What I'm saying, by the way, this isn't going to happen voluntarily. The key
No,
to
because some of the most powerful people, stakeholders in our society, are some of the most sort of richest landowners, the church, the royal family.
correct. So what I'm saying is we're about to face a systemic failure. Just look around yourself. Look at the banks. We've had 4 or 5 banks go under in America, Credit Suisse, and that's only just started. Most of the banks are insolvent because of the fact that they've got treasury bills which haven't been marked to market, and they've got debt portfolios that are massively in problem because of the interest rate. So banks are in trouble. Real estate's in trouble because, of course, nobody can afford the mortgage at interest rates of 4.5%, 5%. That's residential, commercial. Pensions are in trouble. Wherever you look, we're facing a systemic failure because of these conscious decisions allowing the banks to literally print money as they are. What I'm saying is when it goes pop, and I can't tell you precisely when, it's not a long way off. You have to sit back and think about what we're doing. Are we going to bail out the banks again? Are we going to allow these billionaires to make more billions? Or are we going to say this time around, no, we're going to do it covenantally. We're going to look after the poor people. We're not going to take away their houses, that they will get their house without the mortgage. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about protecting the people and not saying we go with a default law, which is contractual, which protects the creditors. We want to protect the debtors so that people will not have the houses repossessed because the banks have overlent. And that's what, if we're not careful, when the banks go under, you lose your house, not the bank. You lose your house, and that's not fair. So these are real issues that we're going to have to grapple with.
And would you argue that because of that, because we went in and we rescued the banks, they also need to give back to society as well? Is that something you're shaking your head, Maurice? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. But to go back to your point, I mean, about the royal family, about the church, about, a renewal of the covenant would involve them, let's say 20% of the royal family's land, 20% of church lands are endowed to local people to build their homes. I mean, this is a way of restoring a relationship between the institutions.
But do they own the land, the people who are building their homes there?
Yeah.
They do.
That would be,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a model, we could talk about it if you wish. I mean, community land trusts, where the land is endowed for the community and the individual families own it within that. But there are shared things like water, drains, because anytime there's human settlement, there's a necessity for a whole institutional ecology around it. Schools, hospitals, shops, water, electricity, gas. So those become socially owned, those things. Civic trusts is the model that we've developed. And yes, the family is the owner of the home. But this is that's about land and the ownership of land. But what Philip's talking about there is the way that the banks have manipulated the financial system to their own advantage, where they create money, charge interest on money, benefit from that, which leaves everybody indebted to them, so they become one of the masters.
Yes.
So that's
So what I'm
related
saying,
to land, but not.
So what I'm saying is, there's a problem with the banking system. If you can't see it with your open eyes, then you're in the dream. In 2008, it imploded. It's about to implode again. The system is fundamentally problematic because it's too centralized. What's happening now in America is the regional banks are being shut down one by one. We're getting the big banks, which are too big to fail, which are growing and growing, which is the opposite of what you need. You want to distribute. You want to create community banks. You want to actually have thousands of local banks building local relationship with local families, with local businesses.
Which is precisely what we've lost, isn't it?
Which is what happened, crazy
Yeah.
enough, it's what happened in China. We're crazy that the 40 years of growth in China was because they did this. They actually created thousands of regional community banks working locally, which means you start to reignite the community, start to care for people locally. And we've lost it. When we move to a centralized banking system, everyone will tell you, there's nobody to speak to in the banks. A mortgage is a transaction. I had relationships when I started in business that saved my business. business right at the beginning, those have all gone. So it's fundamentally, we need banking, but it's community-based banking for the sake of the common good, distributed around the country. That will change the world.
And it would also restore a sense of place, because there's a real sense of dislocation, isn't there, when your high street starts changing. And even I have turned up at what I thought was the post office and been really confused to find that it no longer exists.
But this is systematic, because place is one of those things that's completely invisible to both the market and the state. They want these systems, universal systems, where it doesn't matter where you live. We're disembodied beings. This goes back. So we talk about housing as a market, which ignores the fact that every single human being needs habitation, a place in the world, space in the world. And this is the absolutely central feature of capitalism, really, is it tries to destroy any notion of place in order to facilitate the free, frictionless circulation of money.
So what we're told is there's this myth called the free market, which will look after everybody. The invisible hand will ensure that everybody, just leave it to the free market. No, because what ends? You end up with survival of the fittest. You end up with commercial banks that are ruthless, that are lending based on collateral. And you end up with inflation, unemployment, all those things that you don't want, because the planning is actually done by the banks. And effectively, you say it's not a free market. It's actually planning. It's not as bad as Russia, where you've got where the banks were centralized, but it's still planning by the banks. What I'm saying is, rather than leaving it to this market, mythical market, which doesn't solve the problems, which doesn't look after people and doesn't look after the land and the environment, let's consciously create a cycle that is man-made, that looks after people, the poor people, looks after the planet, and it's real. And why leave it to the banks? Allow them to do it. We have a new set of banks, which are community interest banks, and we actually look after people and the planet. And it's as simple as that. It's very doable.